Hello, welcome to episode 2 of Women of the Future. If you're joining us for the first time, it's great to have you. I am Magla Pillay in the studio with Sister Denise, and we are looking at what makes a woman, a lady from anywhere across the globe, irrespective of the features and characteristics that make you distinct. We are looking at how this woman looks into the future, how she's recreating herself, and how she uses tools that are available to her today that weren't available, say, 10 or 20 years ago. How does she embrace life and make herself strong and successful? Sister Denise, a very warm welcome to today's show.
Thank you.
Today's topic is particularly interesting. This is a subject that I've heard Sister Denise take up on a previous episode in another series, and because it was so rich and deep, we thought we'd look at it from another angle. Sister Denise, today's topic is entitled, Taking Sorrow is a Sin. Yes. Now, I'm very aware, like most of you, that most people don't even want to hear the word sin because they consider it to be an antiquated term. However, it may be antiquated in terms of vocabulary, but certainly not antiquated in terms of reality. Okay, so Sister Denise will take us through this topic and tell us what it means. And I urge you to fasten your seatbelts. Sister Denise, taking sorrow is a sin. What does that mean?
Well, let's look at the sin as something that you do which causes you to have to pay a price. So usually sin is described as you do something which is harmful to somebody else, you will have to pay. The second level of sin is you don't do what you should do. That's also not good. You will have to pay the price. Taking sorrow, now mostly people think that, well, if sorrow comes to you and you don't have any choice about taking it. Now what spiritual practice says is you do have choice. And okay, something negative comes to you. Somebody gives you a very unpleasant message, somebody insults you, somebody hurts you, somebody betrays you, all the usual things that happen to people. And you receive it as it is intended to be received, that is, it's intended to hurt you. You receive it as a hurt. That means it penetrates your heart, it may poison your heart, it may make you bitter, and you take it in, it may even cause you illness. That can be done. Maybe you resent it, you get into a lot of thinking over it, and they should not have done this, they should not have said that, it's very bad, and so on and so forth. And while you are processing this, you're poisoning yourself more and more and more. In other words, you are doing damage to yourself over and above what was intended by the person who, or the circumstance which wanted to hurt you. And what spirituality is saying is that's optional. You know, what are the other different ways that you could do it? So spiritual practice teaches us a lot of these that people really don't know about. And because we say, okay, well, I have the option to take it in a much more proactive way, then you realize that if you don't exercise your options, you are actually doing a sin which is no less sinful than you do something bad to somebody or you fail to do the right thing.
In the scenario that you just described, what you're saying is you are taking pain that someone has inflicted on you and you are inflicting it onto yourself?
Yes, in addition.
How do you create the firewall to stop the sorrow and pain from penetrating into your psyche and hurting you? Denise, this, what you just said, this topic and this message is a fresh news to almost everyone listening to it.
Yes, probably.
Okay, because it's unheard of. Point number one. Point number two is, some poor lady 3,000 4,000 miles away is watching you right now and say, but that's impossible. Tell us how you pull it off. It would be great to get there, because it would make you neutral and it would make you immune.
Well, that's the idea.
Yes, but I've yet to meet somebody, well, you being the exception, I've yet to meet somebody who's pulled that off. So tell us how you create the firewall.
Well, let's go with an example of something that is designed to hurt somebody. Okay? I don't love you anymore. I love this other person over here. Conventional society says, okay, I'm being rejected, you promised that you would love me forever and so on, and now you're not. That means I take sorrow. It also means that my existence is determined by whether or not you love me, you see, which means you're giving away your power, number one. Somebody says to you, I don't love you anymore. You will say, oh, I'm terribly sorry. I am so nice and so lovable. Something wrong with you that you don't love me. You know, but to be able to do that, to be able to think that and feel that, means you have to really know your lovability. Otherwise, the way a woman is taught is that she's only lovable insofar as somebody tells her she's lovable. And if that person tells her she's not lovable, then she's all of a sudden doesn't have any value. And that is not a very good message to have taken in the first place. So you see, the whole process of being able to empower yourself is to begin to challenge these notions that you have been fed for generations, you see. And that the whole society's, oh, he doesn't love you anymore, oh my God, how terrible, now you don't have any existence, whatever. Excuse me, what are you talking about? I am very lovable. This person may love somebody else. What does it mean? It means I'm not attracted by your body anymore. I found some other more attractive body. That's really what it means, you know, in most cases. And a relationship between any people, especially with the usual as a married couple, right? There's a lot of work to build a relationship. And our education process, our socializing and so on, it gives no clue to people as to how to do that. So I think what we're also doing by saying taking sorrow is a sin is we're challenging the whole industry of giving sorrow, because it's like an industry.
I never thought of it like that before.
It's like an industry.
Sister Denise, what you just described is not a question of what I can do at that point in time. It takes a lot of work so that if that situation does arise, and we all know that it will arise, you'll be prepared for when it does. Isn't that so? Okay, so you've used one example of being rejected, but then you get other examples where people are physically hurt, all form of abuse going on across the globe, all forms, to females, young and old. Okay, so what does a lady, young or old, do to protect herself beforehand?
You definitely need to know how to protect yourself, but your vibration, your atmosphere, your sense of self is a very important thing right there, you see, because there are many women who do not know how to set boundaries. And because
Really?
of that, their boundaries get broken from a very young age, and they never really know how to do this. And part of it is because mothers prepare their daughters to be violated. It's very much part of the process.
Sure.
And
Sister
I
Denise?
think people really don't realize this.
Yeah, what does that mean?
You see, the women who create children, daughters, have been socialized in a certain way, and they will socialize their daughters in the same way as they will be socialized, you see, because it goes from generation to generation to generation. And there's so few people who will sit down and think, you know, what is the validity of the way I was brought up? You know, because as soon as you do that, you kind of make yourself an outsider. And it's quite difficult for a person to voluntarily marginalize themselves or make themselves an outsider. But there are people who will do this, and they will say, let me check if all of this that I have been trained in is valid, you see. It's sort of built into the education process, it's built into how people are brought up, it's built into the television programs that you get, you know. Women who are thinking for their own selves will get ridiculed, or a scenario will be presented where she just gets herself tripped up and, you know, she loses out, and you know, all sorts of different ways to get people to be a certain way and stay within a certain parameter and make people afraid to come out of that parameter. So some of the people who have done the best work, in a way, you know, are the ones who are survivors, you see, because a person who's a survivor of a very extreme situation, where you've grown up in a really dysfunctional family, or you have had the odds stacked against you really badly, say you're a brilliant intellectual and then you were denied the opportunity to develop that through the education system and so on, you still have something in here which is operating. And there are women who've been able to put two and two together and figure it out. And this is highly creative and innovative. This is where you start to get the, in a sense, the templates created and the pathway laid for other women, you see, to say, well, look, you know, here's a situation similar to mine, and look what this woman did with the cards that were handed to her, you can say. And so I think that that plays a role in this.
Yes, Denise, just now you mentioned that mothers do not teach their daughters about boundaries. Did I hear you, understand you correctly?
Yes.
Tell us more about boundaries. You mean mental boundaries, don't you?
Physical even.
Physical boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about boundaries.
Well, for example, if the mother favors the son and gives the daughter, you mentioned in another occasion about how a girl was treated by her father in a he discriminated against her in comparison with her brothers. When the mother does that too, she's teaching the girl that you should feel embarrassed that you're a girl, and you should feel less than because you were fated to be a girl. You're second class. You're you don't have rights. If they pass you over, well, that's, you know, your situation. That's because you're a girl. I agree that you should be denied education. So the mother will not stand up for her daughter. If the father is that way and the mother stands up for the daughter, she has a better chance. If both parents treat their children in an equitable way, I really think it's a mistake for girls to try to be boys. There's no point. You're not. You're a girl. But you have rights. You have a good intellect. You have creativity. You have all the things that are thought to be the prerogative of the males. But it's not really true, you see. And also, you have other aspects which are very feminine and which are also very powerful. which are considered low grade or not important or whatever. So what I'm feeling is our whole society has to really rethink what it thinks about what it means to be a girl or a boy. What it means to be a boy is, in most cases, it's very positive, but there are some very negative things about what it means to be a boy. What it means to be a boy is you have to go to the military and probably get killed. That's not very nice. What it means to be a boy is you have to be somewhat brutalized so that you push your way through the world and become successful through your slightly brutal way of doing things. Yeah, that's not very nice for a young man to grow up with, unless he's naturally that way, in which case it fits his personality. But I just feel that the whole way in which our world, our culture, thinks about boys and girls has a bit of toxicity in it, and we really need to look at the whole thing, you know. So in this program we're really looking at the girls, but it's always in the context of the totality, of course. You can't do it exclusively.
Coming back to our topic, which is such a mouthful, taking sorrow as a sin. You said that first you become aware that you are in this position of, you know, making this mistake, and then you become aware that you have a choice in taking sorrow or not. Tell us about the steps that one engages in to create this wall.
I don't know about wall.
You don't know about wall. What word would you describe? You see, sorrow comes to you. This is you, and you have to have a protection barrier. So that's what I'm calling a wall. What would you call it?
Well, you could almost call it a mirror.
A mirror.
So it reflects something back at what's coming. You see, if somebody insults you and you don't take it, that insult returns back to where it came from, you know, because by your neutrality, by your absolutely not taking it, it causes, in a very subtle way, it causes the person to feel guilty for having done that, because they will feel that they did something wrong. If you take it, they'll feel justified. If you don't take it, they'll feel they made a mistake. It's a very subtle thing, but it is a very important part of the process. But there's another thing. Something really nasty is done to you, it hits you. How far in is it going to go? What are you going to do to mitigate it? I think that's a very important thing to talk about, you see, because you do get hurt, but can you quickly repair it? Are you going to carry it into this obsessive compulsive thinking about it shouldn't be, it should, why did this happen, how did this happen, what if I had done it?
Which is what most of us do.
That's right. And I think that when we do that, we're exacerbating it. So we have to have a lot of inner power to stop it. Even if the arrow has gone in an inch, let it not go in 2 inches, you know, and pull it out and break it and say, have a nice day. You know, because I think also, if you go for revenge, it means that you're taking that sorrow and justifying giving as good as you get with maybe a bit more, and that is not really a solution.
I'd like you to take us through the steps of one who would protect oneself. How do you be? What do you do? Do you say anything to the person who harmed you?
It's all going to vary. You, I think, have to spend a lot of time thinking about the scenario, because if there's somebody who harmed you one time, it's probably not the first time. It's probably part of the nature of your relationship with that person. And what you're dealing with is, what do I have to do as a person to change the nature of my relationship with this person such that their natural interest, willingness, and capacity to cause me harm is neutralized. You see, it's all about neutralizing it. You have to see that there's something in yourself that responds to that provocation. You see, so if that person can read you, which probably they can, and they know where you're vulnerable, you see, and they will stick it to you there where you're vulnerable, because it's like a predator, right? They get a rise out of the little animal who is writhing in pain or whatever. It's just a part of the law of the jungle, you can say. But you want to make yourself into something different. You can't really do much about the other parties, but you have a lot that you can do about yourself in terms of how you respond, you see. But what we're taught in Brahma Kumaris about this is you must stay on your seat of self-respect.
And what is self-respect in this context?
Self-respect in this context is that if somebody says something hurtful, like, you're really ugly, because they know that you really are trying to be beautiful. It's a setup, you know. They know you're trying to be beautiful. Doesn't matter how beautiful you are, it's never good enough. It's a whole setup, you know. So you have to understand that you have bought into that setup. And so you need to create maybe even some phrases that you can just pull out. So you have to rehearse them. You can just pull out so that you say something in that case. Or you change the subject. You know, you have to be actually very, very clever and very rapid to respond to it in such a way as to neutralize it. Or you make yourself so in a vibration, you're so conscious of your beauty that if somebody says you're ugly, it just bounces back to them, you see, which is that mirror type of effect. Or you don't care, you know. There are examples of women who've had acid thrown on their face. And very often, normally, when that happens to a person, they will stay in their room and they won't come out because they're so ugly and they can't bear for people to be, you know, responding to their ugliness. But some courageous ones have said, okay, this is the face I have right now, I'm coming out, and if you stare at me or you don't like it or whatever it is, that's your problem, it's not my problem. So to shift it from being your own problem to the other people's problem, there's a mental attitude. And it's very much part of your sense of self-dignity, that I am okay, I am not my face, you know, I am not my age. Because otherwise, for women, if you are beyond a certain age and you start to acquire wrinkles or weight or whatever it is, people say, oh, you're overweight, which means you should feel ashamed. And so if you actually do feel ashamed, when people intend you to feel ashamed, then it's 1 point in the game to them. 15 love, love 15, whatever, it's a tennis match. But you don't have to take it. You don't have to, you say, I think there was one story of one woman who was very overweight and was constantly getting people commenting on it. And one day she came out with this statement that, look, you don't have to carry around this weight, so just be quiet, you know. So to be able to come back like that, I think is quite important, and that's all part of being in your state of self-respect. You know, like it's none of your business. Making comments designed to make me take sorrow, sorry, I'm not going to play that game.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
I'm not going to play that game. Have a nice day. So, unfortunately, I think it's time to say to you at home to have a nice day, because we've come to the end of today's episode. Taking sorrow is a sin. If this was news to most of you, don't feel alone, because Sister Denise has the reputation of coming up with some fresh and shocking ideas as far as spiritual development is concerned. Sister Denise has shared some very fascinating insight as to what it means to take sorrow. This is very new and a very unusual way of looking at things, but most of us are of the view that if somebody says something ugly or nasty towards you, says something or does something, taking it is not a choice. But today, I think for the first time, we hear that we do have a choice. Sister Denise also shared tools as to what one can do in order to empower oneself that that doesn't happen, or if it does happen, to protect yourself against further pain, and not to deliberate over the slight or the affront too much so that you worsen your own pain. Very powerful message, very deep, and not something that one can achieve overnight, but certainly worth exploring as an idea. So taking sorrow is a sin. Please meditate on that yourself and be aware that you do have a choice. Sister Denise, thank you so much, and thank you at home for joining us. Take care and goodbye.